The new economy gang were counting that improvements in productivity would generate lower unit labor costs and therefore greater profit margins. But they weren't counting on breakdowns. Well, but even despite that, they still thought there'd be a greater an improvement in efficiency. They weren't counting on, we talked about it earlier, rising wages. There was a big jump in productivity, Mike, but nonetheless, during the dot-com boom, that big jump in productivity was offset by higher wages. So the costs went up. And that eroded the profitability. And therefore, because the profitability was eroded, which is the margins, overall profits eroded. And then eventually the stock market crashed because the hope of ever rising profits was unfulfilled. That's the dot-com problem. So now, a couple of other things you need to do. This chart is capacity utilization. All right? And can you see okay? It's number 3.3, so you can see it on your screens there. 3.3. Now, capacity utilization looks at industrial production. And it asks this question: what is the current level of industrial production expressed as a percentage of the maximum? So if we're producing 75 tons of stuff a day and our maximum is 100 tons of stuff a day, we're operating at 75% of capacity. Now, notice in the old economy, and the old economy, as far as the new economy folks were concerned, was anything before them, right? In the old economy, it wasn't unusual for the economy to be pushed above 85% of capacity. Now, going back to our steel mill example, we know that if we push too hard, we become less efficient rather than more efficient after we pass a certain point. After we pass the point of diminishing returns, we run the risk of reducing productivity, reducing efficiency. We use the steel mill example, but there are many examples you can use. For instance, here's another one. The engine of your automobile. The engine of your automobile only has a certain size. There's only a certain displacement. The cylinders are only so big. They measure them, right? 2 liters, 3 liters, 4 liters, whatever the size of the engine. So therefore, obviously, a bigger engine means more power. A smaller engine is less power. Bigger engine, more displacement. Small engine, less. Now, at any moment in time, you're limited by the size of your engine. You can only force so much fuel and air through it. And as you push down on the accelerator, your car can't go 1,000,000 miles an hour. You're limited to what it will do. And there comes a point when you reach diminishing returns. In other words, your fuel consumption will rise faster than your speed. Or, putting it a little differently, your fuel consumption will rise faster than the distance covered. Because after all, the distance covered is miles per hour, isn't it? So therefore, if you ride home or anywhere at a steady 50 miles per hour, your car will be about as efficient as it can be. If you're caught in stop and go traffic and you slow down and speed up and slow down and speed up, or if you accelerate to pass somebody, you go faster, but your automobile runs less efficiently. If you go somewhere at 50 miles an hour, you're going to be much more efficient than if you try to get there at 80 miles an hour. If you go at 80 miles an hour, will you get there quicker? Sure. What happens to miles per gallon? Down. And therefore, gallons per mile up. Remember our steel mill example? Productivity is miles per gallon. Cost is gallons per mile. There's two ways for your cost to go up. One is just the engineering way, more gallons per mile if you're a lead foot. But if the price of fuel goes up enough, it doesn't matter how carefully you drive, you're going to spend more on fuel. So, as we said, during the dot-com boom, even though efficiencies were there, wages and salaries rose so quickly, costs went up. Now, during the dot-com boom, folks were very, very impressed. They said, look, our capacity utilization is not going up above 85%. We're keeping it in the low efficient range because we're adding so much plant and equipment. We're adding so much software. We're adding so much technology that we're maintaining efficiency. And therefore, we're doing great here in the late 90s. See, you know, they were very pleased with the situation. Now, what about here? What would happen here? Let's go back to the productivity for a moment.